Hey everybody, CalviNNatioN here with another video for you. In today's video we're going to be talking about this guy right here. This is the Alpha Beast. Got this from Nardath. Thanks buddy. If you guys saw, a couple weeks ago I made a first impressions video of this, mostly talking about the looks and stuff. Today I'm going to talk about the flippability. And I did talk about the flippability just a little bit in that first video. And surprisingly nothing has really changed since then, even in the past couple weeks of flipping it. So basically I'm just going to lengthen all the points I made in that video about the flipping. There's going to be a few major points I'm going to make, and then I'll talk about the kind of subtleties of the actual finish of the knife that make flipping, that change the flipping. But I'm going to talk about mostly how this knife will suit you if you're a faster flipper, or how it will suit you if you're kind of a slow and methodical flipper, and just how speed versus balance is on this knife and all that kind of thing. So there's kind of like three major points I want to talk about. So let's get started. I have my 42 and my 51 with me just for reference. I'm also going to be referencing the Basilisk and the Tachyon 2 a little bit. Unfortunately they're not here because Nardath has those. So let's talk about how this knife will suit you depending on what type of flipper you are. So actually, you know what? I already made this video a while back and I scrapped it. And what I did in that first one was I rated my knives. And I actually did that in my impressions video of this knife as well. So I'm going to do that first because I think that gives you actually a really good kind of place to start in knowing how I feel about this knife. So basically how I like my knives is basically my 42 as my #1 favorite. 51 is #2, surprisingly. A lot of people probably will find that weird. #3 is my Tachyon 2, and the Basilisk and this kind of tie as a #4. So that's kind of how I see these knives. So that kind of already gives you kind of a starting point onto how I feel about this knife. Not as good as these ones, I find. At least they don't fit my preference as much. But it's obviously way better than a Chimera or a 62 or that kind of thing. So I'm a fast flipper. Or at least I try to be. That's what I like. I like flipping fast. I like flipping smooth, doing lots of chaplains, lots of quick rollovers, and quick twirling. Lots of scissoring as well. Now, the guys, Lucifer and Knifezoid, who have made this knife, I think you can all kind of agree. They're both kind of slower, methodical flippers who do really technical stuff. Lots of kind of transfers and weird aerials, and it's kind of slow flipping. So I can see why they designed it this way, because they probably both love this knife because they both kind of like going slow, kind of keeping it methodical and doing unique stuff. For me, I'm not a unique guy. I kind of do the typical crap and do it fast. So what I like in a flipper, and I've mentioned this many times, is something that's light, fast, and comfortable. And this to me isn't really any of those, and that's why I don't like it near as much as these two guys or the Tachyon 2. And that's why it's similar to the Basilisk, because the Basilisk is really quite similar to the Alpha Beast. And yeah, so like I said, I kind of like a comfortable fast flipper, and I've never really talked about comfort much before, but it's something that actually means a lot to me in a Balisong. I work in construction, so I'm using my hands all day and they get pretty roughed up, and you'd think that'd make them tougher, and it does, but just when you come back from a day's work, you don't want to be smacking a 5+ ounce bally against your hands, especially when you want to go fast, because really you can probably hit the speeds of a 42 with the Alpha Beast. Even maybe the 51, you probably could never actually quite get to the speed of a 51 with the Alpha Beast, but you can go fast with this. The problem is it's not really that comfortable. Smacking your hands with this thing does get kind of tedious and kind of annoying, I find, and I just don't think I'd ever fully get used to it compared to something like these two. So that's one thing to keep in mind. So on the other hand of that, because this is a heavier flipper, if you want to flip slower, it's easier to control. Obviously with lighter ballies, you can still flip pretty much just as slow. It's just sometimes it'll kind of wobble around because it's not as controllable, because this will naturally carry the momentum at an easier pace, at any pace you really want. So it'll carry momentum fast and slow. It's just this, it'll be more comfortable. You have the ability to stay slow, but also the ability to go extremely fast and also being comfortable while flipping. So that's why I really like these. But again, it's all preference. So what I'm going to recommend to people who are similar to me is, for the price right now, the Tachyon 2 or even the 51, I think is a way better option. Right now, the Alpha Beast, it's really hard to get, so that's already a con. And it's also really quite expensive, about $375, I guess. So getting a Tachyon 2 for around $260 is a heck of a lot better deal, especially if you're into the same sort of flipping I am, because you'll like the Tachyon 2 better, and it's going to be more than $100 cheaper. And if you actually even want to go cheaper, and even if you're even really similar to me in flipping style, you'll like the 51 even better than the Tach 2, and you can get the 51 almost $100 cheaper than the Tach 2. So there's a few options out there for the guys who are similar to me. So I definitely would recommend a Tach 2 or a 51 over this any day for people who are similar to me. And I will say this, and it's kind of hard for me to say this because this is how I like it. I like the lighter Bally's. But even if you want a Bally similar to the Alpha Beast, I think the Tach 2 is even way better of a deal to go anyway. Because again, it's almost $100 cheaper. It does have similar properties as the Alpha Beast. It's just as long, but it's just a tiny bit lighter and maybe not quite as weight biased in the back of the handles there. So really, on both sides, if you're a slower flipper and a faster flipper, I would always recommend the Tach 2 over the Alpha Beast. That's just how I see it. And you know, it's hard to take my recommendations because everyone has different preferences, but that is honestly how I see it. One thing I wanted to mention about the Alpha Beast is a lot of people I have found do prematurely recommend it. This is pretty much why I didn't upload my previous review on this knife, because I kind of went into way too much detail about kind of the annoying side of the Alpha Beast, which I find is because people have prematurely recommended this knife so many times. There was a time where almost no one had this knife, like maybe less than 20 people or maybe even less than 10 people, and almost every single thread I saw on the JDBA when someone asked about getting a certain Bally, or even on my comment section on my YouTube videos, people would always say, just wait and get an Alpha Beast. Can I get the 51? No, just save up $100, just get the Alpha Beast. So I want to put a few of those things I've heard to rest, just because I feel like you really need to get to know the Bally before you recommend it. There are too many people out there recommending this knife without the proper experience with it. And obviously I'm not bashing this knife whatsoever. As you heard, it's like my fourth favorite knife to flip, but it's just not for me, and it's just not something I want to see people spending almost $400 because of other people's recommendations when they don't even own the knife yet. But I can see why they recommend it. It's the same reason people always recommend the 42 when they don't even have it. There's so many people out there who want it just because other people hold it up to such a high standard. And I think ever since the creation of the Alpha Beast, people have held it up to kind of a false standard because they just don't know how it flipped yet. So just for the guys who really want an honest opinion, I like these way better. Way better. Even the Tach 2, I like it a lot better. So, sorry to go on a little rant there. That's just how I've seen the Alpha Beast ever since it kind of was created. Just a lot of hype. Just too much hype, if you ask me. So I'm just going to restate the facts I've mentioned one quick time here. If you're a lighter flipper like me, I would recommend anything under the Alpha Beast. The Tach 2, the 51, not the 42 anymore, because that's just too expensive. But the Tach 2 and the 51, for a lighter, faster flipper, that's what I'd recommend. If you're a flipper who's kind of slow and methodical, kind of like KZ and Lucy, definitely the Alpha Beast is a really good way to go. Tach 2 is debatable as well. But if you love the look of the Alpha Beast, if you're willing to spend the $375 on it, and if you really are a slower and methodicler flipper, then the Alpha Beast will definitely be better than the Tach 2. So there's my opinions on whether you're a slow flipper or whether you're a fast flipper, which way to go for the Alpha Beast. So let's quickly talk about a few design aspects of this knife that affect flipping, some of the ergonomics and the latch as well. I've kind of touched up on those main points I mentioned in the first part of this video, so I'm just going to again just talk about the kind of smaller details about this knife that can affect flipping. Let's talk about the latch right away. I talked about this in the impressions video. This is actually, for flipping, my favorite part of this knife, because check this out. The latch is kind of designed in a certain way, has a good enough angle on the head, I guess you want to call it. Kind of a weird term. Let's not call it the head anymore. Just the end of the latch. It's angled enough so when that safe handle comes in contact with it, you'll see what happens. Shoots over to this side. Same thing in the closed position. It bounces right off. So what causes? Geez, I can't say anything today. So what happens because of that is no hang up. What you get with a lot of other knives, like the Tach 2, even the Balisong, pretty much any T-latch knife, what happens there, especially with Chimeras, I get this all the time, you have a latch that's not angled enough, and when you land like this, or if the latch happens to get in the way when you're flipping, it stays there, and you get a really awkward finishing point in your combo or your move, and it ends it on a bad note, and you always want to end on a high note. That's always a goal for me, at least in flipping. Whenever I'm doing a combo, I can never end it awkwardly. I just find that weird. So if it ends like this, I kind of scrap it. If it ends like that, it's all good. That was a good combo, a good freestyle. So you'll never get this problem with your Alpha Beast, and that's such a good thing. I've never seen a latch design like this. It's such a simple idea, yet works so well. So plus one of them, really great idea. Only problem about the latch is that it's squared off right here on the whole shaft of it. There's the shaft and the head. But yeah, it's all squared off. So what happens is, you can see there's a little bit of kind of burring along the latch shaft, and that's caused by it hitting the safe handle when you're kind of holding one handle a little bit more than the other. So one of the handles is kind of down a little bit, just normal tolerances, but because of that, the latch will contact the edges of the safe handle, both in closed, both in open positions as well. So what happens is you get little burrs on the safe handle receiving end and little burrs on the latch of on the latch. So what happens there is it'll almost act like a little bit of a Velcro, and sometimes, and I've had this flipping a few times, it'll actually get stuck, like it's stuck right now. You can see that it took a little bit of pressure to get out. So it'll get stuck, kind of like a Velcro thing, and I've had it before where I'm going to start flipping it, and it got kind of stuck. So I go to start, throw it out like this, and because the ends were stuck, what happened was the whole Balisong pivoted in my hands like this. It just went like that, and I almost just threw it right out of my hand. So that's one issue about the latch, but overall, probably only happens, I don't even know, 5% of the time, or even less. But just because of that, that's an A+ latch in my books. One other thing we'll talk about, I'm not sure if it's the one other thing we'll talk about, but another thing we'll talk about is kind of the pattern or the design of the handles and how that affects flipping. Like I said before, I like a comfortable flipper, so to me this isn't really that comfortable. It's got kind of hard edges, and it's also got a sharp bevel. You can see on something like the 42, it's got just a whole rounded top side of the handles, so you can see there's no really sharp edge. It's all just kind of rounded in. Here you have that edge, and then also the inside edge of the handles. So there's a few edges there, and you also have these edges here of that groove, and they're all pretty much at, they're pretty sharp. So what I found is that this isn't really the most comfortable flipper in actual pattern of the handles. I think something like this is still a better way to go, just a whole pattern, everything's rounded off, there's no sharp angles, and it still offers just the same amount of ability to fan, to twirl, and pretty much everything. I don't know if there was really a huge I don't know, discussion on how the pattern should actually be. I don't know if the designers even really think that this was the best method of handle pattern for flipping, but I think it was just kind of a design they started with and they went with. And although it does offer good grip, I just find it's not super comfortable. And again, like I said, being in construction, I don't really love the way it feels, you know, after coming home and just flipping it as fast as I can. It just kind of hurts the hand. So that's one thing about the knife that I don't really care for. I don't really care for the looks or the way it feels either. So let's talk about the tang area. Nardo mentioned this. The tang cups don't go all the way across, so that's a plus. So if you're getting really tight in with the pivots, you're not going to have all the fat of your fingers getting stuck into there. You're going to have parts of it still on that flat edge of the handle. So that's a good thing. 42 has that as well. So just that little bit of extra space just gives a little bit more surface area for twirling and stuff, and your fingers won't get caught in there and pinched. Another thing about the tang area that I don't like is that it doesn't have any horns. I've mentioned this before. I just love a Bali with horns. You can see the 42. I just think it's not a full 100% Bali unless it has horns. People will disagree with me, but that's just how I see it. I just think it gives it so much more personality. It's kind of like a Balisong exclusive thing. It's just really cool. And it also gives you a little bit of grip for cutting purposes. If you actually want to use it in EDC or something, gives you kind of like a thumb ramp. For this, it's just flat, so there's really no grip there. But we're not talking about use, we're talking about flipping. So flipping, I've heard it's better, but honestly, I've never felt any difference between a Balisong with horns and a Balisong without horns. It really doesn't matter. Oops, I just grabbed the bite handle. Almost got myself there. But yeah, I've never had a problem with the horns getting in the way. Obviously, you could design horns that are just total crap, that are sharp, and they will pinch you and they will get in the way. But if you design them right, I think they look way better than a Bali without horns, and they're also not going to screw your performance at all. Even though this is more about flipping, this review, I just wanted to say one thing about the blade that I've always thought, and that is that I really don't care for it. I'm sorry, KZ and Lucy. I just think it kind of looks like childish, if you ask me. Like, I remember when I was back in the day, you know, you're in grade school, I'd always design little blades and knives because that's what I was into. Me and my friends would always design little weapons and characters holding these weapons, all that kind of crap. I just remember designing so many knives that look kind of like this. Like, you know, you start up, you make a little edge, you go up this way, you don't really know how to end it, so you just go back to the tip. That's just kind of how it looks to me. It's like, I don't know if this was their first ever design and they just kept it, or if they made a bunch of different blade shapes and this was their favorite. But I don't know if they did, I don't know, maybe they really liked it, or if they just didn't work very hard on the blade shape, but I think it's pretty crappy if you ask me. But again, all of this is preference. They might have liked every single thing about this knife when they made it, and I just see it differently. So I think this blade shape is really quite rudimentary, just not original at all, and just kind of childish looking, and just something that I think anyone could design just in a minute. So I think they could have took a little bit more time on that. I'd like to see some cooler blade shapes in the future, something a little bit more original. And that replicant, it is pretty original. I haven't seen a blade shape that looks really like that at all. But you know what? I think I'm going to end it there. I've pretty much touched on all the things I wanted flipping wise. If you guys agree on anything, let me know. If you disagree, let me know. But you know, keep it professional. I don't want to start any arguments here. But and keep in mind, hopefully you guys made it all the way to the end. Every single thing I said about the Alpha Beast in this review is based on personal preference. You might be totally different, you might be the same as me, so you might agree or you might totally disagree. And that's just something that in the knife community you're going to have to deal with. So I guess take it how it is. Hopefully for the guys who kind of know how they flip, their flipping style, hopefully they'll get some good points out of this video and they can decide whether they want this knife or not. And yeah, just hopefully this was a help. So sorry for the rambling. Hopefully I can add a bunch of cool pictures of this knife in so you guys aren't super bored during this whole thing. Also some flipping footage. So I appreciate it, guys. Take care.